Developers, welcome back. We're going to talk now about functions as properties. So I have opened up the functions as properties file inside the functions folder. Let's start off by creating an object. And we have been discussing my pet. I'm not even going to call him pet. I'm going to call him Rocky. Rocky, my little pit bull. His name was Rocky, right? So make note that I can't have a variable named similarly to a property within inside that object. What type of animal was it? It was a dog. And now, let's talk about another property, age, right? So here we go. Oh, I got a little error. Let's fix that. And let's put a semicolon at the end here, so it looks nice and neat. So here's an object. And we're going to wait for the graph to redraw. And let's now write a function. My function is going to be speak. And the function speak here is simply going to console.log rocky.name. Okay? So it's going to console log rocky.name. Now, naturally, we're going to see Rocky and we're going to see speak show up here on the graph. If we open up our developer tools, control, right click on inspect, I can now execute the function called speak, right? So here's speak, there's the name of the function. It's a globally available function. I open close parens, execute, and I say, hey, here comes Rocky. And it's console logging right out of line 33, right? So there's line 33. It's console logging rocky.name. Now, naturally, Rocky possesses the power to speak, right? So I could say, and in fact, let me do it this way. I'm going to say speak. The property is actually pointing to this function called speak. This might be a little confusing. Let's see how this renders, because I, again, don't like using the same names all the time because it might get just a little confusing. Is this speak a property name? What is going on here? In the graph, though, it does become clear that the function speak, here it is being pointed to by this property called speak. Let's just say that instead of calling it speak, I called it bark. All right. So because Rocky's a dog and the dogs bark. So the dog barks. And so I am using this function speak, but I'm referring it to within Rocky as bark. And if I look at now the object in the console, if I output Rocky, I see that Rocky now has this speak function attached to it. But it's not known as speak when it's inside of Rocky. If I do speak here, it's undefined. If I try to execute the speak function that belongs to Rocky, it says, nope, you're out of luck. What I have to do out of Rocky, because Rocky has, again, let me output Rocky as is. You can see it here. Rocky has a function called bark. Rocky.bark, it's a function, so I invoke it, and I get the name Rocky coming out of it. So that's really handy. Now I can get Rocky to bark. Okay. But turns out, actually, that's not that handy because I can't reuse this function, right? Let me show you now my other dog. His name was Apollo. I'm just going to call him my second dog, very verbose. So my second dog is going to render, and we're going to see that they're two separate objects, right? Rocky and my second dog, whose name is Apollo. But they both use the function called speak. That's super cool. So why is that cool? Because I'm going to show you now that Rocky can bark, and there's Rocky's name. And now I have my second dog, and he can also bark. Look, he's got a function. If I forget to invoke it, it's going to give me the function output, right? The actual description of it. Let's go and actually get Apollo to bark. Oh, how confusing. It's actually spitting out Rocky. So I can have now I have an opportunity to change this though, and I'm going to show you in a second how to change this so that when Apollo barks, it's going to say Apollo, and when Rocky barks, it's going to say Rocky. Before I move on though, let's just review that I can have here a function that lives outside of both object definitions, and I can reference this function because it's globally available. I can reference this function within one of my object properties, right? And it's the same exact function. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change now, because I want the dogs to say their own name. I'm going to change it, and this is now going to be an introduction to the keyword this. The keyword this, notice how it highlights in blue, because it's a keyword. Here's the tricky thing about the keyword this. It changes meaning. The keyword this changes meaning. It changes what it points to depending upon how it's being used. So right now, if I say Rocky bark, I get Rocky. And if I get my second dog to bark, I now get Apollo. Super cool, but also at the same time super confusing. Because for you, if you look at this function right now, you don't know what it's going to say. You don't know what it's going to log. So let me go to my little drawing guy and let's see. Let me just draw out the little arrows for you. When I execute this bark property that belongs to my second dog, the keyword this points to the object that the function bark is attached to. Okay? So the keyword this, when I execute it coming off of my second dog, the keyword this points to my second dog, right? The keyword this inside of here, when executed by Apollo, points to this object whose name property is Apollo. And that's why when it says this.name, okay, on this end, let's see here, when I'm accessing it through Apollo, my second dog, this points to this object. Therefore, the name that it points to is Apollo, because the object.name is Apollo. All right. Let's look at what this looks like in the console of my browser. The keyword this is going to point to the object known as Apollo, which is my second dog, right? So here's my second dog, and my second dog has a name. That's why it says Apollo. And my second dog that bark, the keyword this points to, let's open up another little drawing. So I got a lot of drawings going on. When I'm about to execute this bark function, I hop on over to here. And when I hop on over to here, the keyword this points to the instance of the object that bark belongs to, right? So bark. Bark is a property of my second dog, and my second dog has the name of Apollo. So the keyword this is going to bounce from pointing to my second dog. Let me go back to my other drawing. Depending upon how it's invoked, if it's invoked from here, this points to my second dog, right? If it's invoked, let me use my other guy. If speak is invoked from my second dog, this is pointing to Apollo, which has this name, Apollo. If it's invoked using Rocky.bark, the keyword this points to this object. This object has a property named Rocky, and therefore it outputs, it has a property named name and has a value of Rocky. So yes, we are talking about functions being properties. And why is that? But why is that so powerful? One of the reasons is that we can reuse the same function inside of many objects, so we don't have to worry about creating in memory another function. It could be, in fact, the same exact function, and it opens up a set of functionality that is really powerful and really flexible. But now, look, this doesn't actually have to be that way. if we wanted to, I can have another function called run, and I can define in here now, oh, check this out. I can define in here a function, either like this, or maybe even I say run, what if I call it go? All right. So if I define this function like that, run, oh, let me console log something in here as well so we can see this work. And I'm going to define this as I am running. Come back to my developer tools. So there's Rocky. It's got bark that points to speak, and it's got run that points to a function called go. This function called go, I can execute it out of Rocky. But because the property is called run, I have to say run. I am running. Even though internally there's a function named go, I don't have access to it. All right. Now, I've actually gone to the trouble of giving this function a name. When I'm using this particular syntax, I don't actually have to give it a name because doing this enough with the property name run is perfectly fine. And here is a fourth flavor of what a JavaScript function could be. This is a anonymous function. Okay, so this anonymous function here, notice, it's just basically known as run. This function that doesn't have a name is an anonymous function. And if I were to pull this out over here, it's not actually valid syntax for it to hang out by itself. But you will see a function. There is a way to make this valid, and I'll show you that in another video. A function without a name, though, is an anonymous function. Okay? You can think about it in that terms because it makes good sense. So here's two ways to create a function as a property, one inline, and then sharing a function that is available to us because it's either available globally or it could be available through another object in general. And now we have also demonstrated the fact that the keyword this is pretty tricky in that it will change meaning and value. In fact, let's go actually and say instead of speaking this, it's actually going to speak and output the entire object. Watch. So to my console, I hit up arrow and I'm going to say Rocky speak. Oh, no. Rocky's going to bark. And now here comes the entire object of Rocky. And my second dog, I'm also going to have that guy bark. And it's going to spit out the entire object that the function belongs to, that the function is defined within. All right. Now, okay, you see how that's happening now? What happens though? Because you can see that I actually have direct access to the function called speak. Watch what happens when I execute the function speak directly, because speak directly is not attached to a dog. What happens? It actually outputs the entire window object. So this here, there's a lot going on here, but it's the entire window object because the keyword this just hanging out here by itself points to the entire window object, the entire window object of the browser. That if I execute speak directly, without it being attached to an object, the keyword this now points to something completely different, and that being the window object. Okay, so that is defining functions and properties. Now we're going to go and start talking about some other aspects of how to work with and how to define functions.